Today, I'll be giving you an update on my training for the 50K. I'll be talking about some fueling strategies I've been playing around with. Also talk about how to measure progress when you're doing a lot of low aerobic zone 2, and I'll talk about heart rate training in general.
This is the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast, and we're here to build autonomous athletes and put phenomenal programming into every garage, basement, and spare bedroom out there. I'm Jerred Moon, and I'm with Joe Courtney. We are strength and conditioning coaches who have turned over 20,000 people into garage gym athletes over the last decade. And we're here to reduce the information overload that exists in the health and fitness industry today. We're going to do that by covering relevant science and give actionable takeaways, not only from the data, but from our years of experience. So let's dive in.
All right, let's kick off with talking about heart rate training. It can be incredibly frustrating to do a lot of zone 2 training. And so I'm in this base block of doing a lot of basically MAF zone. So 180 minus your age is kind of your MAF zone. So MAF zone 2, I'm in an 8-week block, nearing the end of this 8-week block of doing all this. But I'm not necessarily only been doing it for the last 8 weeks. I kind of started throwing a lot of zone 2 in around probably June, July of this year, and I've been doing it fairly consistent. And one thing that I've noticed is how variable it really is. And if you want to compare apples to apples in this type of heart rate training, you can't just say, okay, well, I'm the same person, so my heart rate should be the same today as it is tomorrow. There is so much variability in heart rate, and that's what I'm learning. So I've learned that consistency is king if you're doing heart rate training. So trying to train the same way every day, the same time every day, if you have that luxury. So I've moved all my training to morning sessions to get a little bit more consistency in my heart rate, and I've noticed that being a huge difference, because I do notice that there's huge variability in training, even in zone 2, whether you can talk about temperature, you can talk about going up a hill, down a hill. Those are not the things I'm talking about. Those are external factors. I'm talking about internal factors, like whether or not you're hydrated to the same level you were the previous day, what you're listening to, how much stress you have going on in your life, what time of day, what you ate, what you didn't eat. All of those seem to factor into your heart rate training. So if you're new to this stuff, I would highly encourage as much consistency in how you fuel, the exact time you train, how hydrated you are, what you use to hydrate, all of those kind of things. Then you really start comparing apples to apples when you're doing your zone 2 training. And it's taken me a long time to finally get to this point where I'm like, okay, I'm starting to feel really consistent, with my performance on a day-to-day basis, and I'm not seeing these huge fluctuations. And that's because I'm locking everything up that I can and making it consistent as possible. Now, jumping to kind of measuring progress. Progress with zone 2, I guess I've been doing it consistently, like super consistent, several times per week for 5-6 months now. And I feel like I've made almost no progress. That's how it feels. But that's why it's great to have a wearable. I'm specifically wearing a Garmin and a chest strap to measure all this stuff. And I was looking back over data today because that's how I feel, right? I'm like, I feel like I've made no progress, like next to no progress. And if I did make some progress, it was minimal. And that's just not the case at all. When I go back and look at my data, I've improved a huge amount. It's not where I want to be, and I think that's the standard and the ideal that I keep holding myself to, is like, I want this level of performance with my zone 2 workouts, and I'm not there, so I constantly feel like I haven't made any progress. But when I look at what the actual data says, I have definitely improved my average mile time, my heart rate overall, like what pacing I can handle at different heart rate intensities. So my advice to anybody looking to do this stuff is make sure you're tracking everything as much as you possibly can, and look back at the data if you don't feel like you're making progress, because that's where I was over the last 2 weeks. I was like, man, I got sick. Then when I got back, like my performance was off, and I was like, I just feel like I'm not making any progress. But then when I look back at all the data, and I go back to like looking at individual workouts, I'm like, okay, you did 6 miles zone 2 on this day, like what was your pacing, all that kind of stuff, and I'm really knocking it out of the park in all these areas. I've made a lot of progress, but it's far from the ideal, right? It's far from where I want to be. So again, just measuring as much as you can really helps, and it's going to be slow. Like, I honestly think if I want to get where I'm at, I thought I would be there by now. It's looking like this could take a year, year and a half, if I even want to consistently do that much, running in general for that long period of time. It's going to take a very long time to get to where I want to be. And so just kind of adjusting my mindset on that. Now, lastly, fueling I've been playing around with. If you caught a recent podcast, I was talking about a study where it kind of went over people going on a high carb diet and doing, elite level endurance stuff, and some of them ending up with pre-diabetes just because of the sugar intake. And as someone who feels like they don't do as well with carbohydrates, I don't want to say carbohydrates, with sugar specifically, I've started adjusting some fueling strategies to look at that. Now, I've mentioned some of this stuff on the podcast before, but like I do a lot of zone 2 training fasted, but now I'm getting into much longer durations. We're talking like this weekend, I'll probably run a half marathon just in a training run. And so I don't necessarily want to go into runs of that length, even if they're in zone 2, completely fasted. So I am starting to, mess around with some starches and fats for fueling strategies. And one supplement I've mentioned several times, not a sponsor, no kickbacks or anything for me, is UCAN. So it's a carbohydrate supplement that is starch-based, made from corn, and it has a, they say it's even keto-friendly, like it won't spike your blood sugar like taking a bunch of sugar would be. They have gels, they have powders, all this kind of stuff, and I'm not trying to promote them, but I've brought that back into the fold as opposed to, I would have like a banana and peanut butter before something like an intense interval session, but now in zone 2, I'm adding in stuff like UCAN, like starch-based, and I'm even trying some MCT oil in very small amounts, pre-run, those kind of things, and then adding the carbohydrates later into the run when I really feel like I need it, because it becomes very obvious when you need carbohydrates. It wasn't to me at first, but you start to realize, like, your body stores carbohydrates, so we have all this glycogen. So sure, you're probably fine for an hour running at zone 2, but then you'll realize once you click into that next hour, you don't feel as strong. Your performance doesn't feel as good, even though you can keep moving. And then the second you have that shot of carbohydrates or whatever, you see that performance lift and you feel a lot better in the process. So this is what I'm playing around with right now. I really want to dial in and practice a lot more with my fueling strategies, what I'm going to have. I might even do some blood tests during the course of this training to find out what's happening with my blood and my blood sugar and all those A1C levels, things that I'll look at. But that's what I'm trying right now. Some MCT oils for fat and some starch-based carbohydrate supplements for kind of middle of the run, and really only on the longer runs. The shorter runs I'm keeping fasted, and then with strength training, I'm keeping everything normal. So I got about 26 miles this week overall, and then also got in across 3 training sessions, and then I also got in 3 body geometry strength workouts, so 6 training sessions over the last week. Feeling really good. Start of the week last week was rough. Coming off that sickness, my performance metrics were way off, but they quickly regulated it and got better, even to where today and this week I'm feeling great and things are looking a lot better. So that's my update. Hopefully some food for thought for you if you're looking to implement any of this stuff in your training. But that's it for this one. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.
Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. If you want to find out more, check out our training or just know more about us, head to garagegymathlete.com.